Mother Bear stuck in a treehouse. What this human baby did put everyone in tears. Let us know where you are watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun filtered through the trees surrounding the small cottage at the edge of Whispering Pines Forest. It was early June, and the lush clearing hummed with life. Birds sang their cheerful tunes. Squirrels chattered as they leapt from branch to branch, and wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze. Inside the cottage, little Lily Morgan, just 14 months old, sat by the large bay window in the living room. Her chubby fingers grasped a soft plush rabbit, her favorite toy that rarely left her side. Lily's bright blue eyes widened with delight as she spotted a family of deer cautiously making their way across the clearing. She pressed her tiny palms against the window, leaving smudged fingerprints as evidence of her excitement. "Look, sweetie, deer." Savannah Reed, Lily's mother, pointed as she finished folding the laundry. "They're saying good morning to you." Lily giggled, bouncing slightly on her padded bottom. The cottage had been in Jacob Bennett's family for generations. Jacob, Lily's father, had insisted they spend the summer here after Savannah had recovered from a difficult winter fighting pneumonia. The fresh air and peaceful surroundings were medicine for them all. The cottage itself was a charming structure with stone walls covered in ivy and a thatched roof that seemed to blend into the forest behind it. A wraparound porch offered views of the clearing, and just beyond, nestled in the branches of an ancient oak tree, stood a treehouse that Jacob's grandfather had built decades ago. Jacob had spent the past week restoring it, hoping that when Lily was older, she too would enjoy adventures among the leaves. Savannah glanced at her watch. "Jacob should be back from town soon with supplies," she murmured, mostly to herself. "We're almost out of milk." As if responding to her mother's words, Lily suddenly turned her head toward the window again. But this time, her expression changed. The cheerful birds had gone silent. The deer had disappeared. Something was different. Lily tilted her head, listening to unfamiliar sounds coming from the clearing. Low, rumbling growls, snapping twigs, agitated shuffling. Savannah was in the kitchen now, preparing lunch, unaware of the change outside. Lily, however, was transfixed. Her curiosity bubbled over, and with the determined focus that only toddlers possess, she pushed herself up onto her wobbly legs. Using the furniture for support, she made her way to the slightly ajar front door. The screen door hadn't latched properly after Jacob left, and with one small push from Lily's determined hand, it swung open just enough for her to squeeze through. The wooden porch boards felt rough under her bare feet as she tottered to the railing, peering through the gaps. What she saw made her drop her plush rabbit. In the clearing, just beyond the cottage, a massive brown bear paced anxiously around the base of the oak tree. It wasn't just any bear. It was a mother bear, her dark fur catching the sunlight as she moved, and she was clearly distressed. Her eyes kept darting upward toward the treehouse, and painful, worried sounds escaped her throat. Lily had seen bears before, in her picture books, on the nature shows Jacob liked to watch, and once, at a safe distance, during a family picnic. But she had never seen one so close, and never one that seemed so sad. The bear rose on her hind legs, reaching toward the treehouse entrance. She managed to get her head and shoulders into the opening, but then nothing. She couldn't move forward. She backed up, tried again, and again became stuck at the same point. After several attempts, it became clear the mother bear was too large for the treehouse entrance. She was stuck, half in and half out. And from inside the treehouse came high-pitched, frightened whimpers. A cub. Her baby was inside, separated from her, and she couldn't reach it. Lily watched, fascinated. In her innocent mind, the situation was simple. A mommy couldn't reach her baby. And that was sad, very sad. "Mama," Lily called out instinctively, but her voice was too soft for Savannah to hear from the kitchen. Instead, the mother bear's head swung in her direction, dark eyes focusing on the tiny human watching from the porch. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The bear stared at Lily. Lily stared back. There was no fear in the toddler's eyes, only curiosity and concern. Then the bear let out another distressed groan and renewed her efforts to free herself from the treehouse entrance, twisting and pushing with increasing desperation. The wood began to crack under the pressure, but she remained firmly wedged in place. The cub's cries grew more frantic. Lily's own mother remained unaware in the kitchen, the radio playing softly as she prepared lunch. And little Lily, filled with a compassion too pure to be hampered by caution, made a decision that would soon bring an entire community to tears. She began to climb down the porch steps, one small step at a time, toward the trapped mother bear. The wooden steps creaked beneath Lily's tiny feet as she descended. The sound momentarily caught the bear's attention again, but rather than showing aggression, the massive creature seemed almost to deflate, as if recognizing that her predicament was becoming increasingly desperate. The afternoon sun beat down on her thick fur, and beads of sweat were forming around her snout. She was exhausted from her efforts, yet the cries of her cub drove her to continue struggling against the unyielding wooden frame. Lily reached the bottom step and paused. The soft grass tickled her toes as she took her first hesitant step onto the lawn. She had never ventured this far from the cottage without her mother or father holding her hand. A tiny voice in her developing mind told her that she should probably go back, but the distressed sounds from both the mother bear and her trapped cub tugged at something deeper within her, an innate compassion that transcended fear or caution. 20 yards separated Lily from the enormous bear. 20 yards that might as well have been 20 miles for her wobbly, unpracticed legs. Yet she was determined. Inside the cottage, Savannah hummed along to the radio, spreading homemade strawberry jam on freshly baked bread for lunch. The sound of the mixer as she prepared lemonade drowned out both the bear's distressed growls and the soft padding of her daughter's feet across the lawn. "Lily, sweetie, lunch is almost ready," she called out, expecting to hear the familiar giggle from the living room. When silence answered her, Savannah turned down the radio. "Lily?" Her eyes scanned the living room, spotting the abandoned plush rabbit by the open door. A cold wave of panic washed over her as she rushed to the porch. "Lily," she screamed, her voice breaking as she spotted her baby halfway across the lawn, moving steadily toward what appeared to be, Savannah's heart nearly stopped, an enormous brown bear. "Oh my God, Lily, stop!" Savannah bolted down the porch steps, but froze when the bear swung its massive head in her direction, baring teeth that could crush bone with minimal effort. The mother bear let out a warning growl that reverberated through the clearing. The message was clear: stay back. Savannah's legs trembled beneath her as maternal instinct warred with primal fear. Her daughter was walking toward certain death, yet rushing forward might trigger the bear's defensive instincts. She was paralyzed by impossible choices. "Hello," a voice called from the edge of the clearing. Connor Adams, the local forest ranger, emerged from the tree line, his uniform a welcome splash of authority in the unfolding chaos. He assessed the situation with the calm efficiency of someone trained for wildlife emergencies. His pace slowed considerably when he spotted Lily toddling toward the bear. "Ma'am," he addressed Savannah in a controlled, quiet voice, "please don't make any sudden movements. That's Jessica. We've been tracking her and her cub for months. She's not typically aggressive, but with her cub in distress." "My baby," Savannah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, you have to do something." Connor nodded, slowly reaching for the tranquilizer gun holstered at his side. "I'll try, but a dart takes several minutes to work. If she charges before then—" "There's a child approaching a bear." Another voice joined the fray as Ethan Marshall, the town veterinarian who had been hiking nearby, emerged from the opposite side of the clearing. His sudden appearance startled the mother bear, who jerked violently in the treehouse entrance, causing a loud crack as one of the wooden planks gave way. The bear remained stuck, but the sound set off a chain reaction. The cub inside the treehouse began wailing with renewed terror. The mother bear roared, her patience at its end, and little Lily, now just 15 yards from the massive animal, sat down abruptly on the grass and began to cry. The sound of the child's tears seemed to cut through the tension like nothing else could. The mother bear stopped struggling, her eyes fixed on the tiny human, sitting vulnerable and afraid on the grass. Something shifted in her gaze. Recognition, perhaps, of another mother's fear, of another baby's cries mixing with her own cubs. Connor and Ethan both moved forward cautiously, but Savannah held up her hand. "Wait," she whispered, her maternal instinct sensing something the others couldn't. "Look at the bear." Indeed, the mother bear had ceased her violent attempts to free herself. Instead, she let out a different sound. Not a roar or a growl, but a low, almost gentle rumble. It was a sound meant to soothe, to comfort. She was calling to her cub, but she was also somehow acknowledging the crying child before her. Lily's sobs quieted as she looked up at the bear. Their eyes met across the dwindling distance, and something extraordinary passed between them, an understanding that transcended species and language. The toddler wiped her tears with pudgy hands and, to everyone's astonishment, smiled at the bear. Then, with the pure intent that only a child could possess, Lily pushed herself back onto her feet and continued her approach. "No," Savannah whispered, her voice strangled with fear. Connor raised his tranquilizer gun. Ethan stepped forward, ready to intervene, but the mother bear remained still, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching child. The clearing fell silent, except for the soft whisper of wind through the trees and the muffled whimpers of the cub above. What happened next would be recounted throughout the town for generations to come. Lily reached the base of the oak tree. The mother bear towered above her, partially embedded in the treehouse entrance, massive paws dangling several feet above the child's head. In any other circumstance, it would be a scene of imminent tragedy. Instead, Lily looked up at the trapped animal and did what came naturally to her. She reached up with both arms, the universal signal of a child asking to be picked up. "Up," she said simply, her first clear word of the day. The bear lowered her head as much as her trapped position would allow, bringing her snout within feet of the toddler. She inhaled deeply, taking in the child's scent. Then, instead of aggression, she responded with a gentle huff of warm breath that ruffled Lily's fine blonde hair. From the edge of the clearing, Savannah's legs finally gave out, and she sank to her knees in the grass, watching in disbelief as her daughter and the wild bear regarded each other with what could only be described as mutual curiosity. "I've never seen anything like this," Connor whispered, slowly lowering his tranquilizer gun. "It's almost as if they understand each other," Ethan finished, equally amazed. But the moment of connection, beautiful as it was, did not solve the bear's predicament. She was still firmly wedged in the treehouse entrance, and her cub was still trapped inside. The brief calm began to fade as the mother bear's discomfort returned, and she shifted restlessly, once again trying to free herself. As she moved, something fell from the treehouse, a small, round object that bounced on the grass near Lily's feet. The toddler picked it up curiously. It was an apple, partially eaten, with tooth marks that could only belong to a bear cub. And that's when Lily Morgan did something that caused the first tears to fall from the eyes of those watching. She held the apple up toward the trapped mother bear, offering the only help her little mind could conceive: food for the distressed animal. The mother bear sniffed at the apple but made no move to take it. Instead, her eyes darted upward toward the treehouse where her cub continued to cry. Lily followed her gaze, putting together pieces of a puzzle that even her developing mind could understand. The bear wasn't hungry. She was worried about her baby. With surprising decisiveness, Lily dropped the apple and moved to the wooden ladder built into the trunk of the oak tree. Before anyone could react, she placed one foot on the bottom rung. "Lily, no!" Savannah screamed, finally breaking free from her shock-induced paralysis. She ran forward, but Connor caught her arm. "Wait," he said, his voice tense but measured. "If you rush in now, you might startle the bear. That could be disastrous. But my baby is climbing toward a bear cub. You can't expect me to just watch." Ethan stepped in, his veterinarian's knowledge of animal behavior providing a different perspective. "The mother isn't showing any signs of aggression toward your daughter. It's almost as if she understands." As incredible as it seemed, Lily had indeed begun to climb the ladder toward the treehouse, her small hands gripping each rung with determined focus. The mother bear watched, making no move to stop her. If anything, the massive animal seemed to grow calmer with each step the child took toward her trapped cub. 3 rungs up. 4. 5. Lily climbed with the single-minded determination that toddlers reserve for particularly important missions. The adults watched in helpless fascination as she ascended toward the treehouse where both bear and cub were trapped. Just as Lily reached the platform outside the treehouse entrance, a truck came barreling down the dirt road that led to the cottage. Jacob Bennett slammed on the brakes as he took in the impossible scene before him. His wife restrained by the forest ranger, the town veterinarian standing nearby, and his baby daughter halfway up a tree, inches away from a trapped bear. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted, leaping from the truck and running toward the tree. The sudden noise and movement startled the mother bear, who jerked violently in the treehouse entrance. The wood cracked further, but still held her firmly in place. Her distress returned full force, and she let out a pained roar that shook the leaves around them. Lily, rather than being frightened by the roar, patted the bear's trapped leg with her small hand. "Shh," she said, mimicking the sound her mother made when soothing her after a nightmare. "Shh." Incredibly, the bear quieted. Her dark eyes found the child again, and that same strange connection seemed to pass between them. Jacob stood rooted to the spot, unable to process what he was seeing. "Savannah," he called, his voice cracking. "What is our daughter doing?" "Helping," Connor answered for her, his professional demeanor finally showing cracks of emotion. "Somehow, she's helping." Inside the treehouse, the bear cub had gone quiet, sensing the presence of someone new near the entrance. Lily reached the platform and peered inside through the small gap next to the mother bear's wedged body. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the cub, a small, fluffy creature, with curious eyes that looked back at her with equal interest. In that moment, as child and cub regarded each other across the barrier of the mother bear's trapped form, something shifted in the energy of the clearing. A new possibility emerged, one that none of the adults would have considered, but that seemed perfectly logical in the innocent mind of a 14-month-old. If the mother bear couldn't get into her cub, perhaps the cub could come out to its mother. Lily looked at the small gap between the bear's body and the wooden frame. It was just barely wide enough for her arm to fit through. She reached into the treehouse, her small hand extending toward the frightened cub. "Oh, God," Jacob whispered, taking an involuntary step forward before Connor's restraining hand landed on his shoulder. "Don't," the ranger advised. Any sudden movement now could be catastrophic. Inside the treehouse, the bear cub sniffed at Lily's outstretched fingers. Its tiny wet nose touched her hand, and rather than pulling back in fear, Lily giggled. The sound was so incongruous with the tension of the moment that it startled everyone, including the mother bear, who twisted her head as much as her trapped position would allow, trying to see what was happening. The cub, encouraged by Lily's gentle demeanor, took a tentative step toward her hand, then another. Its natural curiosity was overcoming its fear, drawn by the child's calm energy. She's luring the cub toward the gap," Ethan observed, his professional interest momentarily overriding his concern. Incredible! Indeed, as the adults watched in astonishment, Lily continued to coax the bear cub toward the small opening with soft sounds and gentle movements of her fingers. The cub approached cautiously, sniffing and occasionally making small, questioning noises of its own. When the cub was just inches from the gap, Lily pulled her hand back slightly, encouraging it to follow. The cub hesitated, then pushed its small snout through the opening beside its mother's trapped body. "It's working," Savannah breathed, hardly daring to hope. "She's actually getting the cub to come out." With painstaking slowness, the bear cub squeezed its head through the gap. Its shoulders followed, then its front paws. The mother bear, sensing her baby's progress, remained remarkably still, as if understanding that any movement might disrupt this unexpected rescue. Finally, with one last push, the cub tumbled through the gap and onto the platform where Lily sat. There was a collective gasp from the adults below as the cub shook itself, now free, but still separated from its mother by height and circumstance. The cub looked at Lily, then at its trapped mother, confusion evident in its movements. It paced the small platform, whimpering softly. The mother bear responded with gentle huffs, communicating in ways only they understood. Lily, watching this exchange, seemed to grasp the next step intuitively. She patted the top rung of the ladder, then began to descend slowly, one careful step at a time. She paused, looking back at the cub, and patted the ladder again. "She's showing it the way down," Jacob said incredulously. "Our 1-year-old is teaching a bear cub how to climb down a ladder." The cub approached the edge of the platform hesitantly, peering down at the ladder with obvious uncertainty. Bears can climb trees with ease, but the artificial construction of a ladder was foreign to its instincts. Lily continued her slow descent, stopping every few rungs to look back and encourage the cub. To everyone's amazement, the young bear cautiously placed one paw on the top rung, testing its stability. "This is unprecedented," Connor murmured, his professional experience offering no protocol for the scene unfolding before him. Absolutely unprecedented. Step by careful step, Lily led the way down the ladder with the bear cub following tentatively behind her. The mother bear watched their descent, her massive body still firmly wedged in the treehouse entrance but her attention entirely focused on her cub's progress. When Lily's feet finally touched the ground, a wave of relief washed over Savannah and Jacob. But the drama wasn't over. The cub was still midway down the ladder, its movements becoming increasingly uncertain as it neared the bottom. "It's getting scared," Ethan observed. "This is the critical moment." As if on cue, the cub froze on the ladder, unwilling to continue downward but unable to climb back up. It began to whimper, its small body trembling with fear. Lily looked up at the distressed animal, then at the worried faces of the adults around her. With the simple logic of a child, she sat down on the grass beneath the ladder and patted the ground beside her, inviting the cub to join her. The cub's eyes locked on the tiny human. The mother bear let out an encouraging huff, and slowly, tentatively, the cub descended the final few rungs of the ladder. When its paws touched the ground, it immediately scampered toward the base of the tree where its mother remained trapped, looking up with obvious distress. The immediate crisis, separating the cub from its mother, had been resolved, but the larger problem remained. The mother bear was still firmly wedged in the treehouse entrance, and now that her cub was safely on the ground, her struggles renewed with increased vigor. "We need to get her out before she tears that treehouse apart and hurts herself," Connor said, moving forward cautiously. "Now that the cub is safe, I might be able to tranquilize her, and we can work to free her while she's sedated." "Wait," Jacob interjected. "I built that treehouse. The entrance is reinforced with a metal frame underneath the wood. That's why she's stuck. She can't break through it, and forcing her might cause serious injury." He looked thoughtfully at the structure. "But if we could widen the entrance just enough, how do you propose we do that with a frantic bear in the middle of it?" Ethan asked reasonably. "I keep tools in the shed," Jacob replied. "If I could reach the support brackets on either side of the frame, I might be able to loosen them enough to create more space." While the adults discussed strategy, something remarkable was happening between Lily and the bear cub. The small creature, still frightened but driven by curiosity, had approached the sitting toddler. They regarded each other with matching expressions of wonder, two young beings encountering something entirely outside their limited experience. Savannah watched, her heart in her throat, as the cub cautiously sniffed her daughter's outstretched hand. When the cub gently bumped its nose against Lily's palm, several onlookers who had gathered at the edge of the clearing gasped. The interaction was so gentle, so contrary to everything they'd been taught about wild bears, that many found themselves blinking back tears at the simple beauty of it. "Look," Ethan whispered, nodding toward the trapped mother bear. "She's watching them, but she's not showing any signs of aggression. It's as if she trusts your daughter." It was true. The mother bear had ceased her violent struggling and was observing the interaction between her cub and the human child with what could only be described as cautious acceptance. Her eyes moved between her cub and the adults surrounding the tree, clearly assessing potential threats, but each time her gaze fell on Lily, something in her posture softened. "We still need to get her out," Connor reminded them. "Jacob, if you think you can loosen those brackets, I'll cover you. But we need to be extremely careful. The moment that bear feels pain or perceives a threat to her cub, all bets are off." Jacob nodded grimly. "I'll get my tools." As Jacob hurried toward the shed, a pickup truck rumbled down the dirt road. Michael Hayes, the local handyman and something of a mechanical genius, stepped out with a toolbox in hand. "Heard on the emergency frequency there was some kind of situation with a bear," he explained, taking in the scene with professional calm. "Thought you might need some help." His eyes widened when he spotted Lily sitting on the grass with the bear cub cautiously circling her. "What in the world?" "It's a long story," Connor replied. "But right now, we need to figure out how to widen that treehouse entrance without getting anyone killed." Michael assessed the structure with a quick, experienced eye. Hydraulic jack might do it, could spread the frame just enough to get her free without risking the whole thing collapsing. He glanced at Jacob, who had returned with his toolbox. "You got one?" Jacob shook his head. "Not here. There's one at my workshop in town, but that's 15 minutes away." "Got one in my truck," Michael said, already heading back to retrieve it. "Always come prepared." While the men discussed logistics, Savannah couldn't tear her eyes away from her daughter. Lily had remained remarkably calm throughout the ordeal, and now sat contentedly on the grass as the bear cub grew increasingly comfortable in her presence. The cub was still maintaining a cautious distance, but its initial fear had given way to curiosity. "She's not afraid at all," Savannah whispered. "How is she not afraid?" "Children. Lily's age haven't learned fear the way adults have," Ethan explained quietly. "They respond to energy more than appearance, and somehow she's sensing that neither the cub nor its mother means her harm." The crowd at the edge of the clearing had grown larger as word spread through the small community. Logan Carter, the town mayor, arrived with his wife Avery, both watching the scene unfold with expressions that shifted between concern and amazement. "We should get everyone back," Connor advised, noticing the growing audience. "If anything goes wrong, having this many people around could be dangerous." Logan nodded, turning to address the onlookers. "Folks, please maintain a safe distance. The ranger needs space to work." Meanwhile, Michael and Jacob were preparing their rescue attempt. The hydraulic jack was positioned strategically against one side of the treehouse entrance frame, with wooden blocks serving as buffers to distribute the pressure. "The trick," Michael explained, "is to apply just enough force to widen the gap without causing the whole structure to fail. We'll go slowly, a fraction of an inch at a time." Connor stationed himself nearby with the tranquilizer gun at the ready. "At the first sign of aggression, I'll have to sedate her. Be ready to move quickly if that happens." Jacob nodded grimly. "Let's do this." As the men worked, something unexpected happened. The bear cub, which had been circling Lily cautiously, suddenly darted forward and nudged her hand with its nose. Lily giggled in delight, and without hesitation gently patted the cub's head. Several people gasped. Savannah took an instinctive step forward, but Ethan held her back. "Wait," he said. "Look at the mother." The trapped bear was watching the interaction intently, but rather than showing signs of protective aggression, she remained calm. Her eyes tracked every movement between her cub and the child, but there was no growling, no baring of teeth. "It's almost as if," Ethan began, then shook his head in disbelief. "As if she understands that your daughter helped bring her cub to safety." "That's impossible," Savannah whispered, though the evidence before her eyes suggested otherwise. The gentle interaction between Lily and the bear cub continued, creating a surreal counterpoint to the tense rescue operation unfolding at the treehouse. Michael carefully operated the hydraulic jack, applying pressure in small increments while Jacob monitored the structure for signs of stress. "A little more," Jacob instructed. "I can see the frame starting to give." The mother bear, sensing the shift in her confinement, grew alert but not panicked. Her eyes moved between the men working near her and her cub playing with Lily on the ground below. "That's it," Michael said, as a distinct creaking sound emerged from the wooden frame. "It's widening." The mother bear felt the pressure around her body ease slightly. She shifted, testing her newfound mobility, but couldn't quite free herself yet. "More," Jacob urged. "Just a bit more." Michael pumped the jack again, and the frame groaned as it expanded another half-inch. The mother bear immediately sensed the difference and began to wriggle, trying to extract herself from the opening. "Careful," Connor warned, his finger hovering near the trigger of the tranquilizer gun. "If she comes out too quickly..." His concern was justified. After being trapped for so long, the mother bear's instincts might drive her to lash out in confusion or pain once freed. And with her cub and a human child in such close proximity on the ground below. As if sensing the rising tension, Lily suddenly stood up and toddled toward the base of the tree, directly beneath where the mother bear was struggling. She looked up at the massive animal and clapped her hands together, her face brightening with a smile. "Lily, no!" Savannah cried, breaking free from Ethan's restraining hand and rushing forward. Time seemed to slow as multiple events converged. The mother bear gave a mighty heave and finally pushed herself free from the treehouse entrance. Michael and Jacob scrambled backward as the massive animal emerged fully onto the small platform. Savannah ran toward her daughter, arms outstretched, and the bear cub, startled by the sudden movements, darted behind Lily as if seeking protection. For one heart-stopping moment it seemed disaster was inevitable. The mother bear, finally free, looked down at the scene below, her cub, the human child, and a frantic woman rushing toward them. Connor raised his tranquilizer gun, knowing he might be too late. Then something extraordinary happened. The mother bear, rather than leaping down or showing aggression, carefully maneuvered herself onto the ladder. With surprising dexterity for such a large animal, she descended rung by rung, her movements deliberate and controlled. Savannah reached Lily and scooped her up, backing away as the enormous bear reached the ground. The bear cub immediately ran to its mother, who nuzzled it thoroughly, checking for any injuries. Everyone held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. The mother bear, with her cub safely beside her, raised her massive head and looked directly at Lily in Savannah's arms. Their eyes met across the clearing, the wild animal and the human child who had somehow bridged an ancient divide. The bear huffed softly, a sound not of threat but of something else entirely. Then, with a final glance at the humans gathered around them, she nudged her cub gently and ambled toward the edge of the forest. At the tree line she paused, looking back one last time at the cottage and the small child who had helped reunite her with her baby. Then she disappeared into the shadows of the trees, her cub trotting faithfully by her side. The silence that followed was broken by a collective exhalation of breath, relief, wonder, and disbelief mingling in the afternoon air. Savannah clutched Lily tightly to her chest, tears streaming down her face as Jacob rushed to embrace them both. "Did that really just happen?" someone in the crowd whispered. Connor lowered his tranquilizer gun, shaking his head in amazement. "In 20 years as a ranger, I've never seen anything like it. Never." Ethan approached Savannah and Jacob, his professional demeanor softened by emotion. "Your daughter did something remarkable today, something I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes." Lily, seemingly unaware of the extraordinary nature of what had transpired, pointed toward the forest where the bears had disappeared and said clearly, "Baby bear, bye-bye." A ripple of laughter tinged with tears moved through the gathered crowd. Mayor Logan stepped forward, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I think what we witnessed here today was nothing short of a miracle, the kind of thing that reminds us of what's important." Savannah looked down at her daughter, who was now contentedly playing with her father's watch, the drama of the afternoon already fading from her innocent mind. "She wasn't afraid," Savannah murmured. "Not for a second." "Children see the world differently than we do," Ethan replied. "Without the prejudices and fears we've learned. To Lily, that wasn't a dangerous wild animal. It was just a mother who needed help with her baby." As the crowd began to disperse, many wiping tears from their eyes, Jacob turned to his wife. "I think we've had enough excitement for one day. Let's get our little miracle worker inside." Savannah nodded, but before heading back to the cottage, she stood for a moment looking toward the forest where the bears had disappeared. "Thank you," she whispered, though whether to the bear for sparing her child, or to whatever forces had allowed such an extraordinary encounter to end peacefully, even she couldn't say. That evening, as word spread throughout the small town, People gathered at the local diner to talk about what had happened. The story grew with each telling, how a toddler had fearlessly approached a trapped bear, how she had somehow communicated with the wild creature, how she had saved not one, but 2 lives through her innocent courage. "I saw it with my own eyes," Ethan insisted, his usually clinical demeanor abandoned as he recounted the events to a packed audience at Whispering Pines Diner. "That bear could have killed any one of us with a single swipe, but when that little girl approached—" His voice cracked with emotion. It was like watching 2 souls recognize each other. The diner buzzed with conversation. Longtime residents recalled other bear encounters over the years, all of them ending very differently, with tranquilizers or worse. This was unprecedented in the town's history. Haley Dawson, who taught kindergarten at the local elementary school, leaned forward across her coffee cup. "It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about what children understand that we've forgotten." At a corner table, Connor sat with Michael and Logan, their conversation more measured but no less affected by the day's events. "We need to monitor that area more closely now," Connor was saying. "If that mother bear has established a territory near residential properties—" "She wasn't aggressive," Michael interrupted, surprising himself with his own defensiveness. "Not even when she was trapped and in pain. Not even when strangers were near her cub." Logan nodded thoughtfully. It's almost as if she knew the difference between threat and help. The mayor had been in office for 6 years, dealing with everything from budget shortfalls to natural disasters. But nothing had affected him quite like watching that massive, wild creature look directly at a human child with what could only be described as recognition. "Still," Connor insisted, "protocol says—" "Maybe sometimes protocol doesn't account for everything," Logan said quietly. "Maybe sometimes we witness something that falls outside our careful categories." Back at the cottage, the atmosphere was subdued, yet charged with lingering adrenaline. Jacob had reinforced the screen door with a new spring latch installed high enough that Lily couldn't reach it. Savannah sat in the rocking chair by the fireplace, Lily dozing against her chest, the events of the day having finally caught up with the toddler's boundless energy. "I still can't believe it," Savannah whispered, stroking her daughter's fine blonde hair. "When I saw her walking toward that bear, I thought—" She couldn't finish the sentence, the alternative outcome too painful to voice. Jacob knelt beside the rocking chair, gently placing his hand over his wife's. "But that's not what happened," he reminded her. "Instead, our daughter did something miraculous." "Do you think she'll remember any of this when she's older?" Savannah wondered. Jacob smiled, watching Lily's peaceful breathing. "I don't know, but we will, and someday we'll tell her the story of how she tamed a wild bear with nothing but her innocent heart." As twilight deepened into night, an unexpected visitor arrived at the cottage. A light knock on the door roused Jacob from his thoughts. He opened it to find Avery Johnson standing on the porch, a leather-bound journal clutched in her hands. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "But after what happened today, I think you should see this." Jacob invited her in, curious. Avery was known throughout town as something of an eccentric, a retired anthropology professor who had moved to Whispering Pines 5 years ago to write a book on local folklore. Most dismissed her research as academic quirks, but tonight Jacob sensed something important in her demeanor. "What is it?" Savannah asked, carefully adjusting Lily in her arms. Avery placed the journal on the coffee table and opened it to a marked page. "This is a collection of local stories I've been gathering. Most of them seemed like typical rural legends until today." She pointed to a handwritten entry. "This account is from 1887. A settler named Eliza Woodson described her 3-year-old son wandering into the forest and being found, hours later, sleeping peacefully beside a mother bear and her cubs. Jacob and Savannah exchanged startled glances. "There's more," Avery continued, turning pages. 1923. A young girl named Mary Foster was separated from her family during a blizzard. When they found her the next day, she claimed a big bear had kept her warm through the night. Avery looked up, her eyes intense. The incident was dismissed as a child's imagination, but her description of the bear and its behavior was remarkably detailed. "What are you suggesting?" Jacob asked, though a strange prickling sensation at the back of his neck suggested he already knew. Avery carefully closed the journal. Throughout history and across cultures, there have been accounts of children having special connections with animals, connections that adults have lost or cannot access. Most are dismissed as fantasy or exaggeration. She glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully in Savannah's arms. But occasionally, something happens that cannot be so easily explained away. "Like today," Savannah whispered. "Like today," Avery agreed. "I believe your daughter has a gift, a rare sensitivity that allows her to communicate with animals in ways we can't comprehend." Jacob ran a hand through his hair, struggling between rational skepticism and the undeniable evidence he had witnessed with his own eyes. "Even if that's true, what does it mean?" Avery's expression grew solemn. "It means that Lily may have more such encounters, and not everyone will understand or accept what they see." She hesitated, then added, "It also means she might need guidance to understand her own abilities as she grows older." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by Lily's soft breathing. The implications of Avery's words settled around them like an invisible mist, part wonder, part concern. "There's something else you should know," Avery said, her voice dropping even lower. "These incidents in the historical record, they weren't isolated. They often preceded other unusual occurrences in the region." "What kind of occurrences?" Jacob asked, his protective instincts flaring. Avery chose her words carefully. "Patterns of animal behavior changing. Wildlife appearing in unexpected places. It's as if the natural boundaries between human and animal domains become permeable." As if to punctuate her words, a low, rumbling sound drifted through the partially open window, a bear's distant call echoing from the edge of the forest. It wasn't threatening, but it was unmistakable. Lily stirred in her sleep, a small smile curving her lips as if she recognized the sound. Savannah and Jacob exchanged concerned glances. "You think the bear is still out there, watching the house?" Savannah asked, instinctively holding Lily closer. "I think," Avery replied, choosing her words with care, "that what happened today created a connection that might not be so easily broken." Later that night, after Avery had gone and Lily had been tucked safely into her crib, Jacob stood at the window, looking out toward the dark outline of the forest. The moon cast silver light across the clearing, illuminating the treehouse where the extraordinary encounter had taken place. "Do you think we should leave?" Savannah asked quietly, joining him at the window. "Go back to the city early?" Jacob considered the question seriously. Their summer retreat had been meant as a healing time for Savannah, a chance to recover fully from her illness in the clean mountain air. Now it felt complicated by an element of mystery neither of them had anticipated. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me says we should pack up tonight, but another part—" He trailed off, watching the moonlit clearing. "Another part feels like this is important," Savannah finished for him. "Like Lily is meant to be here right now." Jacob nodded, surprised by how accurately she had articulated his conflicted feelings. It sounds crazy when you say it out loud. No crazier than what we saw today, Savannah pointed out. She leaned her head against his shoulder. What do we do now? Jacob put his arm around her. We sleep on it. Everything looks clear in the morning light. But sleep proved elusive for both of them that night. Savannah checked on Lily frequently, half expecting to find the crib empty, though she couldn't have explained why such an irrational fear plagued her. Jacob lay awake, replaying the day's events and trying to make sense of Avery's warnings. Just before dawn, Jacob was startled from his fitful doze by a sound from the front porch. He rose quietly, careful not to wake Savannah, who had finally fallen into exhausted sleep beside him. Grabbing the baseball bat he kept beside the bed, he moved silently through the cottage. The sound came again, a soft scratching at the door. Jacob's heart pounded as he approached, bat raised. Could the bear have returned? With cautious movements he peered through the peephole. The porch was empty. Frowning, Jacob unlocked the door and opened it a crack, the bat still gripped tightly in his other hand. The cool, pre-dawn air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. He looked down and froze. Sitting on the welcome mat was a perfectly formed honeycomb, golden and dripping with fresh honey. Jacob stared at it in confusion. It was too deliberately placed to be random. No animal would have deposited it so precisely on the doorstep. But who would leave such an unusual gift in the pre-dawn darkness? As he bent to examine it, his gaze caught movement at the edge of the clearing. A large, dark shape was just disappearing into the trees, the unmistakable silhouette of a bear, with a smaller form trotting alongside it. Jacob stood motionless, the bat forgotten in his hand. Had the mother bear brought them a gift? The rational part of his mind rejected the idea immediately. Bears didn't bring offerings to humans. They didn't express gratitude or establish connections across species boundaries. And yet the honeycomb sat there, real and inexplicable in the growing light. Jacob carefully brought the honeycomb inside and placed it on the kitchen counter, his mind racing. What would he tell Savannah? That a bear had left them breakfast as a thank you gift? It sounded absurd, the kind of story that would earn him concerned looks and gentle suggestions to rest. But then, everything about yesterday had defied rational explanation. Later that morning, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Savannah was preparing breakfast when she noticed the honeycomb. "Where did this come from?" she asked, examining the perfect golden hexagons. Jacob hesitated, then decided on the truth. "It was on our doorstep this morning, and I think the bear left it." Instead of the skepticism he expected, Savannah's expression softened. "For Lily," she said simply, as if it were the most natural conclusion in the world. "A gift for Lily." Before Jacob could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Connor Adams stood on the porch, his ranger uniform crisp in the morning light, his expression troubled. "Good morning," he said when Jacob opened the door. "Sorry to disturb you, but we've got a situation I thought you should know about." Jacob invited him in, concern rising. "What kind of situation?" Connor removed his hat, turning it nervously in his hands. "There have been multiple reports of bear sightings in town this morning. Not just one bear, several. A mother and cub near the school playground. 2 adolescent males by the grocery store. An older male walking down Main Street." "Was anyone hurt?" Savannah asked immediately. "That's the strange part," Connor replied, his brow furrowed. "No aggression reported at all. They're just there, walking around like they belong. Sheriff Haley Davis tried to herd one away from the post office, and it just looked at her and continued on its way, like it was a tourist checking out the town." Jacob and Savannah exchanged glances, Avery's words from the previous night echoing between them. patterns of animal behavior changing, the natural boundaries becoming permeable. "There's more," Connor continued, his voice dropping slightly. "It's not just bears. We've had reports of deer walking through the town square. A family of raccoons apparently helped themselves to breakfast at the diner, walked right in through the door when Haley opened up, sat at a table and waited. She said she wasn't even afraid. They seemed so purposeful." "What are you saying?" Jacob asked, though a creeping suspicion was already forming in his mind. Connor shook his head. "I don't know what I'm saying. In 20 years as a ranger, I've never seen animals behave like this. It's like something's changed, like they're no longer afraid of humans, but they're not threatening either. They're just coexisting." From the nursery came the sound of Lily waking, her happy morning babble carrying through the cottage. Connor's eyes moved toward the sound, then back to Jacob and Savannah. "The thing is," he said carefully, "these behaviors started early this morning. Right around the time Dr. Ethan Marshall was driving past your property and saw what he described as a bear leaving something on your porch." Savannah's hand found Jacob's, squeezing tightly. "I know this sounds crazy," Connor continued, "but people are starting to talk. About yesterday, about Lily, some are saying—" He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Some are saying your daughter somehow changed things, that when she connected with that mother bear, she did something that affected all the animals in the region." Jacob's first instinct was defensive. "That's ridiculous. She's just a baby." "I know," Connor agreed quickly, "and I'm not saying I believe it, but after what I saw yesterday—" He trailed off, unable to find rational words for the irrational events he had witnessed. The conversation was interrupted by Lily's insistent calls from the nursery. Savannah excused herself to retrieve their daughter, leaving Jacob and Connor in uncertain silence. When Savannah returned with Lily in her arms, the toddler's face lit up at the sight of Connor. "Bear?" she asked clearly, looking around expectantly. Connor's eyes widened slightly. "Has she been saying that word before yesterday?" "No," Savannah admitted. "It's new." Lily squirmed to be put down, and once on her feet she toddled determinedly to the front door, patting it with her small hand. "Bear," she repeated more insistently. The adults exchanged uneasy glances. What exactly did Lily understand about what had happened? What did she remember? And what, if anything, did she expect to happen next? Before anyone could decide how to respond, another knock came at the door, startling them all. Jacob opened it to find Logan and Avery standing there, both looking simultaneously concerned and excited. "You need to see this," Logan said without preamble. "The whole town needs to see this." Jacob looked over their shoulders to the clearing beyond and felt his jaw drop. Standing in a semicircle at the edge of the forest was a group of bears. At least 5 of them, including the mother and cub from yesterday. They were simply watching the cottage, making no move to approach, showing no signs of aggression. "They've been there since sunrise," Avery explained, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement. "Just waiting." Other animals keep joining them. Deer, foxes, even a mountain lion was spotted at the edge of the group. "Waiting for what?" Jacob asked, though as Lily pushed past him onto the porch, exclaiming, "Bear! Bear!" With delight he suspected he already knew the answer. Logan shook his head in wonderment. "I've lived in this town my entire life. My family has been here for generations. There's never been anything like this." Lily was bouncing now, pointing enthusiastically at the gathered animals and looking back at her parents with expectation clear in her eyes. "She wants to go to them," Savannah whispered, fear and awe battling in her voice. "That's not possible," Jacob said immediately. "It's not safe." Connor cleared his throat. Normally, I'd agree with you 100%. But after yesterday, he gestured helplessly at the unprecedented scene before them. This goes beyond anything in my research, Ivory murmured, her academic detachment temporarily abandoned in the face of living wonder. The stories I've collected hint at special connections, yes, but nothing of this magnitude. Lily was growing increasingly insistent, her excitement turning to frustration as the adults blocked her path. "Bear!" she demanded, stomping her tiny foot. The mother bear, as if recognizing the child's voice, took a single step forward from the group. She made no aggressive move, simply watched, waiting. "What if," Avery suggested carefully, "what if this is exactly what's supposed to happen? What if trying to prevent it actually causes more harm than good?" "You can't seriously be suggesting we let a 1-year-old walk into a group of wild bears," Jacob protested, though he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. "I'm suggesting," Avery replied, "that something extraordinary began yesterday, and it might not be finished yet." Savannah knelt beside Lily, looking into her daughter's eyes. What she saw there wasn't fear or confusion, but complete certainty, the unshakable confidence of a child who understands something important that the adults around her cannot grasp. "I'll go with her," Savannah said suddenly, rising to her feet. "I'll carry her, and we'll approach together, slowly." "Savannah, no," Jacob began, but his wife's determined expression stopped him. "You saw what happened yesterday," she reminded him. "That bear could have killed our daughter a dozen times over, but instead they connected. They understood each other in a way we can't explain." She took a deep breath. "I think Avery's right. I think this is important, and I think if we try to stop it, we might be preventing something meaningful." Jacob looked from his wife to his daughter to the gathered animals at the edge of the forest. Everything he had ever learned or believed told him to grab his family and retreat inside, to call for assistance, to treat this as the wildlife emergency it appeared to be. But something deeper, something that had awakened when he watched his tiny daughter lead a bear cub down a ladder with perfect, innocent confidence, told him that conventional wisdom might not apply here. "I'm coming too," he said finally. Connor stepped forward. "I should go first. If there's any change in their behavior—" "No," Savannah interrupted gently. "I think it has to be us, her family." Logan and Avery backed away, giving them space. Connor reluctantly did the same, though he kept his tranquilizer gun ready at his side. With trembling hands, Savannah lifted Lily into her arms. Jacob placed his arm around them both, and together, the family began to walk slowly across the clearing toward the gathered animals. Whispers spread through the growing crowd of townspeople who had begun to gather at a safe distance. Phones were raised to record the unprecedented event. Parents clutched their children close. But no one intervened. As the Morgan family approached, the animals remained perfectly still. The mother bear watched their progress. Her dark eyes focused primarily on Lily, who had stopped saying bear and was now oddly silent, her small face solemn as if she understood the gravity of the moment. When they were about 20 feet from the edge of the forest, the mother bear did something that caused gasps to ripple through the watching crowd. She sat back on her haunches, a posture of peace, of non-aggression. Around her, the other animals shifted slightly, making what almost appeared to be a path into the forest. They stopped. This was as far as Jacob's courage would take him. The distance between them and the wild animals was still too small for comfort, yet large enough that no immediate danger threatened. They stood in silence, waiting, though for what, none of them could say. Lily squirmed in Savannah's arms, clearly wanting to be put down. "No, sweetheart," Savannah whispered. "You have to stay with Mommy." But Lily was insistent, pushing against her mother's grip with surprising strength. "Down," she demanded. "Down, Mama." Jacob and Savannah exchanged desperate looks. Everything about this situation defied conventional parenting wisdom, defied basic safety protocols, defied rational thought itself. "I'll hold her hand," Jacob offered, his voice barely audible. "We won't let go." With extreme reluctance, Savannah lowered Lily to stand between them. Both parents gripped her tiny hands firmly, prepared to snatch her up at the first sign of danger. But Lily didn't try to run forward as they had feared. Instead, she stood perfectly still, staring at the mother bear with an unnerving intensity. The bear stared back, and once again that inexplicable connection seemed to form between them. A silent communication that transcended species and language. Then, slowly, deliberately, Lily raised her free hand and waved. It was such a simple, human gesture, the kind of thing Savannah and Jacob had been teaching her to do when saying hello or goodbye. Yet, in this context, it carried a weight that brought tears to the eyes of many watching. The mother bear huffed softly. Then, with equal deliberation, she rose onto her hind legs briefly before settling back